Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Kandpal. Good evening, welcome, sir.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a privilege and honor to be standing in front of you and probably speaking about the experience that we've had within Deutsche Bank and association with Newgen. Before I begin, I'll probably like to start up with congratulating Mr. Niga. 20 years of excellent services, and the numbers speak for themselves. I mean, there are very few companies which can boast of having clients across 32 industries, 1,000 plus customers. That's very significant. And also, I mean, 20 years being in the industry and not being approached or taken over by another company, not being poached by other people, and the senior team still being there, that's wonderful. That doesn't happen by chance. That doesn't happen just like that. I mean, people work hard, people really believe in the vision of the company, and then that's why it happens. It just doesn't happen just like that. So congratulations once again, very well done, and I wish you all the best, and I'm sure this company will do great in futures and years to come. From a Deutsche Bank perspective, I think I have not really prepared any slides or anything. I'll probably talk from my heart and talk about the thought process that we were undergoing when we actually started using Newgen. Deutsche Bank, being a large multinational bank, has its own positives and negatives. Positive being, yes, we are large and we work in various markets and across the products. Negatives probably is that we are so large that probably we do not know what the other part of the bank is doing. And that's where we were. So we go back to 2008. Each one of us knows the problem that the industry was facing at that point of time. Lehman Brothers issue had just happened. Probably RBI had just woken up. Everyone was looking at the risk in the industry and how best we can manage. So we were faced with this typical problem of the entire FX market. And specifically for India, where all the bankers who are here in the room, they would know that there is this requirement of having an underlying document for every FX transaction that you do. And RBI has its own rules and regulations around it. And every bank at that point of time was managing it in a different fashion. So Deutsche Bank was also managing it in a different fashion. And like most of the other banks, we didn't have any systems. It was being managed manually, and you had the Excel application which everyone uses. Everyone was using the same thing. When we started looking at the risk, what we realized was the intent of RBI of managing this market was very clear. Their rules and regulations were very clear, but it was difficult to implement it in the environment and in the market that we were at that point of time. The challenges were around the rules which were there at that point of time were probably not clear to everyone. The process that all of us had to follow to ensure that the rules and regulations are being met at every point of time were again not very clear. And the clients whom we were servicing at that point of time again were not very clear in terms of what that rules and regulations really meant and what it meant for them, what it meant for industry, and what it meant for the country. So when I look back at this whole thing, there was an element where the rules were not clear and people were not having trust in each other. I really believe that trust is an element which builds over time, and in many cases, in order to get more business, in order to get more market share, you somehow tend to forget about that when the markets are really good. And that's where probably a lot of problems happen if we don't really control it, if you don't really focus on it. You might actually lose some of your clients and business. So we thought about, okay, what is that we can do to really build this trust between the bank and its customer, between the bank and the regulator. So we realized that there are 2 or 3 things which you really need to do. One is have a common understanding of the regulations, define the process, get the transparency around it so that the regulator, the client, and the bank know exactly what you're doing and it's transparent to everyone. So after having analyzed it and really thought through it, we went into the market and started looking for the solution. And that's where we finally decided on Newgen solution. And the BPM solution was the right fit for us, where it exactly defined, we were able to map the RBI's regulations, what it really meant. And based on that regulation, what you had to do from a bank's perspective and from a client's perspective. We designed it. I think at that point of time it was probably new for the service providers and for everyone to really work in that space. It was new at that point of time. And we used Newgen to really serve our purpose. It was a great opportunity. I mean, we worked for about 6 months on this project together. Newgen was fantastic in terms of giving their best resources and then helping us out drive the solution. And we built this entire workflow, delivered to the bank. And I'm happy to share this information with the group out here, that since then, once we implemented this, we haven't got even a single audit point from RBI on the issues that we are facing at that point of time. Yeah. And this couldn't have been possible without Newgen's help. And in fact, post that there have been so many changes in the regulations, even the clients have come back to us and said that because the way you form, because the way you process, and because the way you actually help us explain the entire regulation, you are pretty good in the market, and they didn't have to incur any loss or incur any points from the regulator. So it's all because of what Newgen has done for us and the way they could really address our issues. And this entire thing was around the trust element that we just talked about. Apart from that, the FX workflow, which I just talked about, there are other areas where we have used Newgen. Clearly, one is the entire KYC process that we do for our retail banking. I mean, Deutsche is very small in terms of retail banking compared to the market likes of ICICI, HDFCs, SBI. We're very, very small. But again, we're using Newgen. It helps us manage our entire KYC process very effectively and efficiently. And with the recent changes and the guidelines coming from the regulator, practically every regulator wants the KYC to be absolutely neat and clean. And it puts so much pressure on the entire process. So Newgen is helping us out. And we have also used CTS product from Newgen. We have implemented it for some of our branches, and we would be going in for the other branches. So within Deutsche, even though being very small, we have been able to use use the products of Newgen where we have used off-the-shelf like CTS. We use client onboarding or the KYC application, which most of the other banks will also use, and also the FX underlying documentation, which was probably bespoke Deutsche Bank issue that we had to address, and we were able to use Newgen solutions around it. So that was our experience, and I see this going forward. We will continue to use these solutions, right? I mean, like Mr. Hanna said, that will the document go away? No, it will not go away. The information is not going to go away. And the reason why it is there is, I think, again, I take it back to the trust element, right? When you have increasingly complex market where you believe that people will take you for a ride, and then how do you make sure that your bank, your company is not taken for a ride? You get into those legal agreements. You get into defining your SLAs. You get into defining everything that you do and then try to protect your interests, which then ultimately leads to a document, an information. And that document or information is not something which one individual owns or one individual department owns. There are various elements within it which people have to provide their input to, and only when these pieces come together, it makes sense. And when you look at large organizations where you have departments across multiple locations, people have different backgrounds, people have different knowledge, this tool really gets it together, and it brings that transparency. So I clearly agree that documents are not going to go away. It's probably going to be there with us, and then we have to find increasingly faster, sophisticated way to really address all those issues. So without taking any further time, again, I would like to wish Newgen all the best, and I'm sure this company will do very well going forward. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, sir. Well, thank you so very much, Mr. Kandpal, for your insight. And now I would request our head of delivery, Mr. Tarun Nandwani, to please come on stage and present a memento to Mr. Kandpal. Thank you, sir.